So I got a Nikon FM here. I bought this off of eBay, knowing that it was broken, but when I got it, it charged and fired once, but the mirror got locked up, so I knew the shutter was probably oily or something. And then it just locked up, where the second curtain never came back up, and just got stuck. So I've been poking at it from the bottom, trying to see if I can wind it that way, but it's not cooperating. So I'm gonna try to see what I can do. Plan is to basically take the top cover off and follow the manual and take out the mirror housing, then finally take out the shutter assembly and inspect it and see what's wrong. So here I'm just taking off the rewind lever, and take note that it's spring loaded. So when you take off that top assembly, be very careful because those components like to jump. So we just take that out, place them somewhere. I got a Harbor Freight bin where I put all my components in. So here I'm going to be taking off the charging lever cap. I tried using, I don't know if you see on the bottom there, I have those flexi clamps, but it's just too tight of a tolerance. So that screw, I finally discovered that I could take it off with, if I took the leatherette off, I could use a compass kind of tool to take it out. So that's taking off the shutter charging lever. So next up, it's the speed setting dial. So here I'm just gonna take the 3 screws around it. So you just take those out completely. You have to back them out completely, and then the dial comes off. So kind of take note of what setting you're putting it on. I like to put it on the last ones. So bulb. This is backing that screw out. Some of these screws are quite jumpy, so be careful. And some of them are magnetic, so they might stick to your screwdriver if that's been magnetized, but some of them aren't. So next up, we're going to take that C-clip out, and kind of want to be careful here. Here I use a screwdriver. It wasn't the best of tools. Is it kind of that post that it's resting on is plastic. In some other cameras, it is metal, and I guess the flathead might be fine there, but here it's plastic, so it's a bit risky, and it could break. So I guess next up, we're going to place that away. Then you have to take out the springs. Be careful, springs like to jump. I like to put my finger on top of them when I can. Oh, almost jumped out there, but it was fine. Yeah, so there we go. We take I guess that's the rewind lever release. And after you take that off, there's a little piece of plastic. Careful about that. You don't want to lose that. So then next up, would be taking out the body screws. There's one on either side, and the front, and one on the back. So just be careful to take those and keep them. I think they're all the same. So I'm gonna try to lift up the top cover. Mine was a bit stiff, but it eventually gave. You just want to lift carefully and evenly. Popped up. And it's free. So just look around just to make sure, keep track of everything, take pictures. I take a lot of pictures. But so yeah, there I desoldered the flash connector. So next up, we're going to be taking off the leatherette so we can reveal the screws to take out the mirror box. So I took the self-timing off, put some naphtha on it to really soften the glue, and then just remove that screw with a spanner, lens spanner kind of tool. And this one is nice. It's not one of those spring loaded, so it just lifts up and doesn't go anywhere. So then I'm gonna heat the leatherette up and peel it. So now we can see the screws that are holding down the mirror housing assembly. But there are a couple other steps that we need to take before we can take those screws out and take the mirror housing out. So the manual actually describes a two-step process. Well, after you take the top cover, you have to take the IC assembly, which is that green PCB to the right. So you desolder all those components, remove some of the screws there, and that assembly is free. So here we're gonna go ahead and do that. And be careful of the LED unit. That's that unit that's to the left of the PCB assembly. Careful not to bend it. The angle is dependent on the angle of those pins, and it's pretty fragile. So here I'm just gonna desolder these wires for the meter. Again, take note and take pictures as to where they should be connected back to. Yeah, pictures of worth 1,000 Google searches. So in the original audio, I was bragging about being the solder champion. I'm just referring to my high school days of building LED cubes. I used to solder in a room and just like fill the room up with just lead fumes. I'm just terrified of what those consequences are, but I'm healthy now. So, well, here we're just gonna take that PCB out, and I didn't pay too close attention, but on the front of the PCB, close to the screw by the front of the camera, there is a yellow, red, and black wire. And you need to also desolder those and pay attention to where they solder back into. So pictures again. And once those are free, then that IC unit is free. And here we can see the LED that indicates the exposure. I like these older cameras. They don't really have a lot of components that are sensitive to electrostatic discharge, although you should be careful. So, but they're pretty robust and actually quite simple and modular. The FM is a very simple and modular camera. I actually made a couple blunders, but I did enjoy taking it apart. So next up, we're going to be taking apart what the manual refers to as the functional unit. But before we take that out, I'm going to mark the, this is the aperture dial, kind of transfer gear train. It sort of couples to a resistor circuit and tells the meter kind of what the aperture has been set to. So I just marked that where they meshed. So if anything went bad, I can always put it back together. So now back to that functional unit assembly. So it's basically the speed setting dial assembly. We have to take that off because it has some screws that join up to the mirror box. So first up, we're going to take out the multiple exposure arm. And here the manual is not very clear, but you need to take off, basically only take out that spring, but I took out the screw as well. So just back out the screw and take off the spring. Be sure to use correct screwdriver width. And it'd probably be better, like I did, to take the spring off before you let the screw go, because the spring could jump halfway across the universe. So once that's taken off, then we need to take out the actual screw that holds it. It's kind of like a shoulder screw. And then the arm should come out. So one thing that I kind of made a mistake on when I reassembled the camera was correctly meshing the button that activates that arm. So next up, there's another sort of it's a spring that puts pressure on the I'm not exactly sure what that unit is, but there's a spring and it's being held down by a screw. So here I use one of the tools that I filed and grinded. You can also use a pair of pliers, but if you have like a 3mm flathead and a Dremel, you could probably make a tool that would accomplish the task quite well. So I'm just I tried using it initially and it was a bit too wide, so I just grinded a little bit more and it fits quite well. So the screw comes out and the spring is it's not under so much tension, but be careful anyways, because alright, so next up we'd be taking out the other screws that are holding down that assembly. I believe there are 2 other screws. So that unit that I'm pointing to is called the FRE stopper, and that basically makes sure the gears mesh correctly. So when you're reassembling, before you put the top cover on, make sure that that piece is in correctly. So also there's the shutter button has a spring and a pin, so be sure to take that out and don't lose that. Hopefully that's not too late in the game for you, but yeah, it was a little late for me. So again, that unit basically, so as you see, when it came out, the assembly kind of released some tension. So be sure to put that back. We might go over this when we put the camera back together. Some of these things I kind of missed and was struggling when I was reassembling the camera. And here I'm just looking at the final screw that needs to be taken out, which is the screw on the back. So we take that out and the unit should pull up. and there's a little solder point that needs to be removed. Just, with a good soldering iron, remove the wire from the assembly. So now we have the shutter assembly, the functional unit free. You can see the scary pulley system that we need to disassemble. Just again, taking note of those gears and where they mesh. Yeah, back to that pulley system. So we need to take that out, and this also has one of those funky screws that requires like a compass tool or a custom-made filed and grinded tool. So luckily I had a filed and grinded tool that I could use. It's a socket wrench. I can't remember the diameter. I think it was I want to say it was a 3mm diameter, maybe 3.5. And then I filed it and dremeled it down. And that assembly basically is what it's telling you the selected shutter speed in the viewfinder. So that pulley engages a wheel that has a strip of plastic which has all the numbers. So when you put the camera back, that thing might not align properly, and you would need to go through like a little alignment procedure to get it back to normal. So don't fear. You can wind it back as you see here, and then correct it by moving that wheel. So here I'm just taking it off carefully because you don't want the wheel beneath it to come loose, because that looks like more of a nightmare to reassemble, and it's under quite a bit of tension. So just take this pulley out carefully, and as you saw, it unwound basically like half a turn or a quarter of a turn, and we need to remember that when we rewind it back. And so here I'm just gonna put back that screw to make sure that assembly below doesn't come free. So next up, we're gonna take out the eyepiece assembly. It's not necessary, but I took mine off because I wanted to clean out the prism, and it's a bit tricky to take out. There's 4 washers that might come off. One washer in each corner. There's a washer beneath the part where the IC comes out. There's a washer under both screws of the eyepiece. So just be careful about those washers and try not to lose them. Actually, really don't lose them at all. You might have to shake them out of your camera if they fall in. So here we're just looking at the screws that hold on the front plate, and we're going to take those off one by one, and hopefully we are presented with a separated mirror assembly, or front plate as they call it in the manual. So I'm not using true JIS screwdrivers here. This is believe it or not, it's a Phillips screwdriver I purchased in Japan. I don't know why they don't sell GIS screwdrivers as standard in Japan, but it's a I think it's a PH 100 or something like that. And over subsequent uses, it's just dull to the point where it became a pretty effective screwdriver at taking out GIS screws. But I recently purchased a set from iFixit.com, and I'm hoping to try them out on my next camera. So, taking out all the screws, and here we're gonna carefully try to. Oh wait, there's one more screw in the back. Don't forget that guy before you break your camera. So just get that free. It's a bit tight, so it comes off. So I guess when we reassemble the camera, I'd be more cautious about describing where those washers go. And here we go. The mirror assembly comes free. Again, just exercise a little caution and kind of, be aware. And it should come out free. So I guess in the next episode I'll talk about how to work the mirror assembly unit, and then we're also gonna take the shutter out and try to service it. But here I'm poking at it to see if it would release, but it didn't. It's not gonna release. It's pretty stuck. But yeah, this is basically all the things you need to do to take the front plate out of the Nikon FM. So here I'm just talking about another camera I have that the blank shot prevention system has failed because I think there's a motor wind switch that's broken at the bottom. So the camera just keeps on winding. But yeah, basically that's the necessary steps we need to take. See you in the next video. Bye for now.